So now that we've got our kind of first widget loading up, we might want to move between widgets or we might want to load separate levels. It just depends on your specific project. So in this video, I'm going to look at how we can do both. So we're just going to pop back into Unreal. So we'll have a look at what we've got so far. So whenever we push play, it fades in this initial kind of widget, and then it fades it out. And this was all getting handled inside here, inside our first menu blueprint. So if we just pop back in here into the design view, we can just have a quick recap in terms of our animation kind of fades up and then fades out. And that's what happens on event construct. So on event construct, we're playing the animation and then we're fading in and we're fading out. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the second menu, basically. So remember we made this at the very start of this video kind of series. So we made UI underscore second menu. So this is just going to be like kind of like a little testing ground that we're going to use over the next couple of videos just to get stuff up and running. So just to begin with, you'll probably find like I do a lot of the same stuff just to kind of test out. So all I'm doing is just dropping in a text box and I'm just going to call it menu 2. I'm just going to stick it there, that's fine. I'll anchor it to the middle of the screen and I'll just hit compile. So what we're going to look at now is how can we go from this fade in, fade out part to loading up the next menu. So there's a couple of different ways we could do this. The first way being that we could remove that initial one and then add this one on top, which is quite an easy way to do. The other thing that we might want to do is we might want to actually change the level at this stage. So we're going to do both. So we'll start with the first method, which is we're going to load up this next one. So there are different ways you could do this. You could, figure out how long that animation is, and then you could say, by the end of the animation, just remove it from the parent. But there's another way that we could do it where we can drag off here and we could say bind to animation finished. So what this is going to do is it's going to let us kind of bind something to this. So it's going to let us kind of link something to this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to right click and we're going to make a custom event, and I'll call this remove and load. We'll call it remove 1 and load 2. So you notice this little delegate, we can plug that into there. So just to see if this works, we'll do a print string on the end of it. So your print strings will still work inside of widgets and stuff like that because you're still running the game. I'm going to say animation done. So if we hit compile now and we pop back and we hit play, so level loads as normal, it plays through the widget, and you see now at the very end, once that was finished, it called on this next thing, which is just a print string saying animation done. So from here what we can do is we can actually say, you know what, could we just make another widget? This time we're going to make it second menu. We know from our last kind of video that we need to add it to the viewport. So you can see now what's happening is it's playing through that. Once it knows that this animation is done, it's going to call this little custom event here. So we don't really need that print string anymore. We can kind of bypass that and won't delete it. And then it's adding our second one to the viewport. Now, the problem being we've not removed this. And the way that we can test for that is if I open up first menu in the designer view and we're going to add something here. That'll just show us if it's working or not. So I don't want to add more text because it's a little bit boring. But we might end up adding some text. Let's go common. Let's just add a button. Yeah, so add a button. We're going to position it up here. We're going to go to the color and opacity. There we go. So now if we hit compile and play, you notice our big silly button sitting there the whole time. So you see now that even though we've finished the animation, it's not actually gotten rid of that widget for us. So we want to now tell it to, by the way, get rid of that first widget. So don't worry, I'm going to get rid of that button, by the way, because it's a bit daft looking. So in our editor here, so we're going to say whenever you finish the animation, we're going to call it remove from parent, and the target will be itself. Okay, now this might get fired off a little bit early, so we're going to see what happens. Drag it in so we can have a look. So it fades up. So it still works fine. So then now what we've done is we've transitioned between one menu to the next menu. So one widget to the next widget. So when the game first loaded up, we were looking at the first menu. It played through. Once animation finished, we then said that, by the way, now load up the second menu. So that's one way of doing it, and that way works fine. But we might want the second menu to appear with like some type of like cool backdrop or something like that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make another level. So we'll go level, LBL, and we'll call this main menu. So when I'm in Splash here, my Splash menu, if I just double check, if we look, this is all fine. I've added on one little bit here compared to the last tutorial, where I've just asked for a set mouse cursor, and I've grabbed a get player controller. So that's why now when you see mine playing, you can see my mouse on screen. So that's fine. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to move on to main level. I want to save everything I've been working on, and we're just going to start throwing some stuff in here. So we're going to go into light, and we'll grab a directional light and throw that in. Then we're going to grab maybe like a basic cube. So if we play now, that looks alright. So I'm going to change the game mode to menu again. But now what we're going to say is, on our first menu, remove that from the parent, and rather than do this, we're going to open level. Now the level name is this one here that we're working on. So what I find easiest, just because sometimes people write names quite weird, I just copy and paste the level name in. Okay, so if we hit compile, now to see if this works, we're going to have to go back into Splash. So if we go back into our Splash level, we hit play, it's loading up. And now you can see it's loaded in our kind of next level. So if we do that again, it's playing through, it's doing our fade in, it's doing fade out. Once the animation's finished, it's loading in. Now the difference is here, I turned off that default pawn class. I set it to none, which basically means that now, whenever that level loads in, nothing's really going to happen. So now in level main, we can go into our open level blueprint. We can say on event begin play, we want to create a widget. We want it to be second menu. We want to add that to the viewport. And remember, we need to plug in that return value. So now, if I go back to my Splash, there is a lot of jumping between levels here, so I'm sorry. So it fades through, it opens up the next level. The first thing that happens in the next level is that main menu 2 gets added to the viewport. So that's how we could do something that's like a little bit more interesting. So obviously this level could have, you know, buildings and geometry, it could have assets, added date and stuff like that. Now, one thing that's missing on this is we haven't told it to display the mouse. So if we go open level blueprint and we say, and it's going to turn off context sensitive. So I'm going to say set show mouse cursor, I want it to be on. Target is get player controller. Oh, accidentally gone with the wrong one. Pile, and then we're just going to jump back to the splash and we'll play from the start. And now we can see our mouse cursors available and stuff as well. So this is like the building blocks of how we can start like moving between levels. So obviously at the minute, like we've set that to automatically happen. So once that animation's finished, remove that from the parent and then open up the next level. But we can do that on mouse clicks and button clicks and stuff like that. So that's something that we'll build up over the next couple of videos as we kind of start developing this menu a little bit more. So the next thing we're going to do in the next video is we're going to start adding like a little bit of interaction to this one, because at the minute menu 2 just having some random text there isn't that interesting, and we'll just obviously remove this as well because we don't need it. So that was just there as a visual kind of debug.